Welcome back, Sebastian here. So moving into the top two in the constructors, next we're going to be taking a look at McLaren. So McLaren have had a very good 2024 so far. Of course, start of 2024 not so good. At points they were arguably third, fourth best team, really fighting it out with Mercedes for third place in the Constructors' Championship. But as the seasons progressed, they've gotten better and better, and Red Bull have definitely stalled, or in some cases have fallen off quite a bit compared to the highs they were at the start of the season. So again, we kind of come into this period at the end of the summer, at the start of the summer break, where McLaren have arguably been the strongest car for the last month or so. They don't really have the stats, or at least the wins, to prove to show for that. But I think nonetheless, they've come on leaps and bounds in the last year and a half, especially since the start of 2023. Where at points they were in the bottom four, bottom three, and at even some races such as Miami, for example, they were the slowest team on track. So first, taking a look at their drivers, Lando Norris, Oscar Piastri, looking at the head-to-head stats between the two of them. For qualifying, quite interesting. So qualifying head-to-head, Norris leads there 11-3. So again, you would expect with an 11-3, you would say Norris has been quite dominant in qualifying. But when you look at median qualifying gap, that's not really the case. The gap's only 0.082 seconds, so less than a tenth of a second, which I think for Piastri is quite reasonable, and for a driver in his second year against a driver of Norris's caliber is quite a good result. Of course, you probably would like a couple more head-to-head victories, but then again, that median gap is pretty good. Starting position, though, there is a bit of a gap there. Norris 3.53, Piastri 5.35. So again, almost 2 positions difference, which really, with that median gap being so small, really suggests that it's incredibly tight at the top of the grid in qualifying. You have at this point, you have Mercedes, you have McLaren, you have Red Bull, all kind of in the mix in qualifying. And again, when Ferrari get it right, they're also in that mix as well. So again, very tight at the top, which again explains why that starting position difference is a little bit bigger relative to the median qualifying delta. Average finishing position 3.60 for Norris, for Piastri 5.12. So a bit interesting in that Norris is actually, his average finishing position is a little bit lower than starting position, and for Piastri, again, improving a little bit. So again, the opposite fate of Norris there. So again, very interesting difference there, but again, Norris comes out on top for finishing position. For points, 199 for Norris, Piastri 167. So about 32 point difference between the two. And again, that gap's definitely decreased the last month or so. At points, it was almost 50-60 points gap between the two of them. And again, that's a gap that, if Piastri has a really strong run of form in the second half of the season, that's something that he could definitely close up and make things very tight between the two of them in the Drivers' Championship. For Norris, of course, currently second in the Drivers' Championship, for Piastri in fourth. And again, I think Drivers' Championship at this point in time is too far. The gap's too big for it to really be a conversation at this point. I believe it's like 70-75 points between Verstappen and Norris. But again, that being said, the battle in the constructors is a real possibility. And I think if their form continues in the last 10 races and Paris continues to struggle, you could be looking at your 2024 constructors champions. In terms of average power rankings, I think both drivers have had very good seasons. For Norris, an average of 4.1, which is second. I'll let you guys guess who is first. And for Piastri, 6.6, which comes out in fifth. So again, I do feel the drivers have been very strong. The car's also been very good, but again, only one win apiece for either the two drivers out of 14 races. So again, that's something that we'll talk about a bit at the end. For points above expected, a bit unexpected given how I felt that the two drivers have been quite strong. Negative 11.67 for Norris, a negative 15.93 for Piastri, which comes out at 94% and 91%. So those numbers are still good. They're not horrific, but again, it generally feels like they're just not executing well and not getting the points that they really should be based on how good their car is. podiums and wins, I already went over the wins, one apiece. Norris, and both of them, of course, their maiden F1 wins. For Norris, that win came at the Miami Grand Prix, and for Piastri, it came at the Hungarian Grand Prix under quite controversial circumstances. For podiums, a bit of a different story. For Norris, he has 8 podiums, second most on the grid, only behind Verstappen. And for Piastri, he has 4 podiums so far, so a bit of a gap there. But that being said, Piastri has been coming on quite strong in the last 3 or 4 races. Now, taking a look at McLaren, the constructor, again, it's quite all over the place. 2021, 4th in the constructors, 275 points, average pole gap of 0.762 seconds, an average minimum finishing position of 5.73. So again, it was a good season. It was definitely an improvement over 2019, improvement over 2020. So again, there was hope coming into the new regulations that they would again be able to take another step forward. We know in 2022 that didn't really happen. They started the new regulations with massive issues with their brakes. They couldn't, all through testing in 2022, they couldn't run the car at 100% because it would just destroy the car's brakes. Of course, Ricardo, after an up and down 2021 season, definitely underperformed in 2022, and that in a car that was arguably 4th best, it should have finished 4th in the constructors. They ended up finishing 5th behind Alpine with 159 points. Again, just talking about Alpine, 2 teams that were very closely matched. 2022 started the regulations, and they've gone on completely different paths since then. Average pole gap again ballooned compared to 2021, 1.227 seconds, an average minimum finishing position of 7.67. So definitely a bit of a step back compared to 2021. 2023, the start of the season was pretty much a disaster. Again, like I mentioned at the start of the video, they were definitely in that bottom group of teams, and at points they were the slowest car on track. But they had that massive turnaround into the European leg of the season, and they were arguably the second strongest team in the second half of the season. They ended up finishing 4th in the constructors. Again, not enough races at the end to make up that deficit to Ferrari, make up the deficit to Mercedes. But again, finishing ahead of Aston Martin, a team that arguably had a faster car. 302 points, 4th in the constructors, average pole gap 0.791 seconds. So again, an improvement on 2022 and about the same level as where they were in 2021. Average minimum finishing position 7.14. So again, this is a stat that I think in this case is a little bit misleading because they were so much stronger in the second half of the season, and extremely weak in the first half, especially the first third. You have some of those really bad weekends that are really dragging that number down, and I would expect it if you removed some of those early races in 2023, you would have a number that would be probably in the low 5s, and again, it would be similar to 2021. But again, a very, very strange season last year for McLaren from a historical perspective. 2024, 2nd in the constructors. So far this year, again, very, very strong season. 366 points, so already more points than they had all of 2023, 2022, or 2021. Average pole gap 0.296 seconds, which again is the best that it's been in the last 4 years, and that's by a pretty big margin. Average minimum finishing position 2.64. So again, that's second best this year, and again, this is kind of the realm that you need to be in if you want to be competing for a championship. Qualifying, again, it's a bit misleading because the first 5 or 6 races they were pretty far off of Red Bull, but the last 7 races or so they've been much closer, arguably the best team in qualifying. So again, that's a number that you would expect to again improve as the season goes along, assuming they stay in about the same spot pace-wise. Again, talking about development, average starting position after the first 6 races, 4.73 for Norris, 6.13 for Piastri, and again, both of those numbers have improved after 14 races. Average finishing position 4.43 and 7.25, so an improvement of about 1 position for Norris and about 2 positions for Piastri. So again, Piastri kind of closing that gap to Norris, kind of showing continuous progression in his development. So again, qualifying and race pace again have both improved for McLaren over the course of the season compared to that quarter-way mark. And again, part of that is because of upgrades, part of that's also because Red Bull and Ferrari have definitely taken a step back compared to where they were after race 6. And again, it'll be really fascinating to watch this battle for the Constructors' Championship between I think realistically at this point it's going to be Red Bull and McLaren. I think Ferrari have unfortunately taken too much of a step back over the kind of the European leg of the season, and for Mercedes, I think I think they have too much ground to make up. I think if they were able to be the fastest car and they were getting 1-2 finishes for the rest of the season, then maybe we could talk about them being in the fight for the constructors towards the end of the season. But I think at this point, it's really going to be between McLaren and Red Bull for that constructors title. And again, like I mentioned before, I think Verstappen's a bit too far ahead in the Drivers' Championship. So unless Red Bull completely fall off the earth and they're fourth best team for the rest of the season, I don't think Drivers' Championship is really going to be something of a talking point in this last half of the season. But again, like we've seen 2022, 2023, and 2024, there's been great in-season development. So generally the upgrades that they're bringing to the car in season have worked very, very well. And unlike teams like Aston Martin, Ferrari, and now you can even kind of talk about Red Bull in that mix as well, they don't have this kind of checkered record of upgrades that they bring to the car, actually making the car slower. So again, that's a great sign for McLaren. And again, you probably have maybe one more upgrade package coming towards the end of the European leg of the season as well. Maybe in the kind of the later rounds like Qatar, America, you have a possibility of maybe one more upgrade package coming there. But again, for McLaren, they've had a bit of a slow start in the last 3 seasons. So again, for them, if they really want to compete for a Drivers' Championship in 2025, they need to make sure that they're off. They are able to bring a very, very strong car from the start of 2025 and not, 1/3, a quarter of the way through the season. And again, another issue that they've had is race weekend execution. They've had quite a few races the last month or two where they've been arguably the strongest car in either qualifying or in race pace. And again, they haven't really been able to maximize those results. Really reminiscent of Ferrari 2022, where again, you saw the Ferrari had such a good car, especially in qualifying for that first third of the season. And there was a period where even though they would get pole position, they would be in a great position, they would just not get the wins. You can go in an entire video just talking about Ferrari's failures in 2022. But for McLaren, I don't think the failures have been as big, and it definitely feels like they're a lot more on the strategic side. And again, one issue that has been plaguing them has been the lack of straight line speed. We saw this in Spa, where Piastri was arguably the fastest car on track, and if he had the red straight line speed, the DRS efficiency that, say, the Red Bull had, maybe he would have gotten that win instead of Lewis Hamilton or what George Russell did on track. So again, it's something that again is a bit of a weakness for them right now, where they're very reliant on their qualifying performance. They're relying on a track being easy to overtake at. Tracks like Monza, even though you have very, very long straights, not the easiest to overtake on. So if they struggle in qualifying at Monza, for example, even if they have the best race pace, they will really struggle to make up those positions. So again, something that they're going to have to work on and try to improve if they want to take the fight to Red Bull in the constructors, and again try to build towards a potential Drivers' Championship challenge for both of their drivers, because I think at this point, honestly, both of them are capable of competing for a Drivers' Championship in Formula 1. So there you go, there's my mid-season look at McLaren. Again, we just have one more video left, and that of course is Red Bull, and then we'll be very, very close to the Dutch Grand Prix, and I'll be getting into my preview for that in a couple days time after this video goes live. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.